So it don't matter really who it is. I'm taking over this division. This weight division is mine, for sure.
Make sure y'all stay on point with the Punchers Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Punchers Point. We got a new king in the 154-pound division, and potentially we might have just found the next pound-for-pound king, because Jaron Boots Ennis defeats Xander Zayas by 7th-round stoppage to become the new WBO and WBA unified 154-pound champion. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I already know Boots was that guy. I already know that he had some of the best skills in boxing. For all you guys that watched the prediction episode, you guys heard me. I thought Zayas was going to go the distance. I really thought that Zayas was going to give Boots a decent fight. And Boots went in there and he just made it look easy from round 1. And then he had some moments in between round 2 and 4 where it seemed like he kind of lost his edge. And then he just picked it right back up from round 5 all the way through round 7, and there really wasn't much that Xander Zayas could do. Now, here's the hot take. In my opinion, I'm not going to lie to you. So the first round, you obviously got to give it a 10-8 to Boots. I had rounds 2, 3, and 4 going to Xander Zayas. Now, y'all might call me crazy. Round 2 was a very close round, in my opinion, but I edged it out to Zayas. And then rounds 3 and 4, I feel like Zayas really started gaining momentum. But as fast as Zayas gained momentum, Boots took it right back. And even though this may have not been Boots' best performance or cleanest performance, what I will say is this. Boots has showed me that he can go into the ring, and even when adversity starts to come near him, or even when, it seems like momentum is about to be lost, he finds a way to dig it out and still get that win. Boots is a very dangerous fighter, and a lot of guys at 154 pounds are going to have to take him seriously because this guy is coming to take over, and he is now a 2-division unified champion. Obviously, he was unified at 147, jumped up to 154, and now is unified there. But he said it himself. He's looking to become undisputed. And obviously, the next 2 champions are Josh Kelly and Sebastian Fundora. We're going to talk about where they fit in this entire picture. But he also has some unfinished business with Victor Ortiz. And that's something we're going to talk about later on in the episode. I'm going to give my take on what should be next for Jaron Boots Ennis. Xander Zayas got knocked down 3 times, and he just kept on getting back up. So Zayas got a ton of heart. And at the end of the day, we got to remember, he's only 23 years old. Okay, Canelo lost to Floyd at 24. So we obviously seen the transition that Canelo made, and Canelo was an all-time great. I get that. Not many guys can make that transition. Somebody like Jaime Munguia, that was somebody who lost to Canelo when we thought could bounce back, and then Jaime Munguia obviously went through a lot of rough spouts. I'm hoping that's not the same for Zayas, because Zayas is a good fighter. He's a tremendous talent, so I'm hoping that he bounces back from this. But regardless, he went in there against potentially the future pound-for-pound number 1 fighter. And I'm not saying he's pound-for-pound number 1 right now. Obviously, Inoue still exists. Obviously, Usyk still exists. But in the future, this guy, Jaron Boots Ennis, might become the next number 1 fighter in the world. Now, with all that being said, we got to get through the fight breakdown. Now, here's what I will say. If we're talking about the fight breakdown, what did Boots do well at? Well, for the keys to victory that I have for Boots, I mean, he covered all 3. He stuck the jab, and the jab was really a punch that he established early. I knew Xander was going to have problems with the jab because that's always been a punch that he's kind of seems susceptible to. That's always been a punch that I think he's been vulnerable to. And Boots has one of the best jabs in boxing. I mean, all of Boots' skills are polished, but that jab I knew was going to be a problem. The second key to victory that I had for Boots was basically win the inside exchanges, and he did that every single time almost. There were some moments, now I'm not going to lie, in the 3rd round where Xander Zayas really started taking advantage of clipping Boots Ennis, and there were moments where I think Boots let his foot off the gas. And I feel like once he was locked in, once he was focused, I don't think Xander Zayas had a chance on the inside. And I mean, the first knockdown was from a left straight, but then you go and you look at the second knockdown, which was from the uppercut, that was on the inside. It looked like he was matching the punches from Jaron Boots Ennis until Boots threw that uppercut. And that was one of the biggest strengths that I had for Boots was that uppercut that he throws. When he threw it and he landed on Zayas, clean flush, might I add, Zayas hit that canvas. And you can tell that once that second knockdown happened, all the momentum went away from Xander Zayas. Because after the first round, Xander really started getting confident. Xander really started putting himself back into this fight, from my eyes at least. And then Boots hit him with that uppercut, and Xander knew that there wasn't much more he could do. He knew that he was outmatched in every single position. And I got to give Boots a lot of credit because this is a guy that could have just outboxed Xander on the outside the entire night. But he decided to actually give us a good fight and go punch for punch on the inside with somebody like Zayas, who was probably a good 20 pounds heavier than him in the ring. So I got to give Boots a lot of credit. And then obviously we go to the third knockdown, and then the third knockdown happened from a right, and Zayas takes the knee, corner throws in the towel, game over. But I guess what I really liked from Boots was he used all three of those keys to victory, and then he even mixed it up. I mean, he was also cutting angles. He was moving around. He was doing really good with the counter punches. It just seemed like everything that Boots was doing in that ring was overwhelming Zayas. And even though Zayas took advantage of the moments that Boots was lacking or Boots put his foot off the gas, it just seemed like Boots was never out of this fight. Now, as far as Zayas, he had a decent game plan coming in. I mean, he said no excuse. He came in with a game plan. He tried to fulfill that game plan. It didn't work out. But Zayas, I told him to use that check hook on the outside, and he did that. There were many moments where he was getting clipped with that hook, and Boots was getting vulnerable to it. Don't stay still. So one of the keys to victory I had was he had to keep on moving. In my opinion, Zayas was not going to win this fight unless he was moving. He was moving, but at the same time, it was basically chasing Boots. And what I meant by don't stop moving, I wanted Boots to be the one to follow him. And I feel like in this fight, Zayas could have moved a lot better. He could have been a lot more fluid with his movement. But at the same time, that's also the athleticism of Ennis because he couldn't keep up with Boots. That's the problem right there. Zayas could not keep up with him. And I feel like because he couldn't keep up with him, he felt like he had to try to chase Boots the entire night, and he couldn't do it. And then punch in between punches, and then move on to the inside. Now, in the third round, he did a very good job of that. In the third round, I believe Zayas did a good job of punching in between Boots' punches, going in there, going into the inside, clipping Boots. And there were some times where he had Ennis on some wobbly legs. But again, Zayas, he just couldn't get himself back into this fight after that second knockdown. And I feel like he had a lot of good moments of punching in between Boots exchanges. He had a lot of good moments of landing some lead power shots. And I think that Zayas came into this fight with a good game plan. Even after the first knockdown, Zayas did a good job of bouncing back. And I got to give Zayas a lot of credit because he really did put up a fight. The only problem is once you got knocked down that third time, I think it was game over. The corner saw it. They knew that Zayas couldn't keep on continuing. It was just going to be like this the whole night. They threw in the towel. Zayas lives to fight another day. But he did do some good things in this ring. And I think there are some things that he's going to look back on and he's going to have to tweak up and polish. But at the same time, I think that there are some moments in this fight that Zayas could be very proud of as well. Overall, I think both these guys had good game plans. It's just Boots is on a different level. I mean, there's a 5-year age gap there. And I mean, that 5-year age gap matters. You know, I mean, we're talking about a 23-year-old versus a 28-year-old in his prime. So Boots got a really good win. Zayas got some really good experience out of this. And potentially Zayas comes back and he could learn from this mistake. He could polish it up. And you never know. Maybe Zayas is the one who's going to be the future star of boxing. We don't know. But I wouldn't count out Zayas just yet. Now, we talk about the best moments in the fight. In my opinion, my favorite moment was that uppercut. And I look at Boots and I look at how he threw that uppercut because the reason why I like that moment so much is because in that specific moment when they were going punch for punch on the inside, they looked like equals. And you're looking, and I was watching them go punch for punch, and I'm like, one of these guys is going to go down. And it was just a matter of who's going to win that inside exchange. And when Boots landed that uppercut, that told me everything I needed to know. That was my favorite moment in the fight. I love the third round. I think the third round could potentially be a candidate for round of the year. Do I think it's going to win it? Probably not. But at the same time, I do think the third round was a very exciting round from both of these guys. I mean, Zayas going in there and just battling back, putting Boots on wobbly legs. Boots going in there and fighting back. And the thing is, we talk about Zayas showing heart and coming back after that first knockdown. We got to give credit to Boots, and we got to give credit to him on his heart as well, because a lot of guys would have got dropped in that third round. There were moments where I thought Boots could potentially get dropped in that third round, but he stayed on his feet and he kept on swinging as well. And that's the big thing too. Boots kept on swinging. There were moments where maybe he had a little bit of some clinches, maybe some tiny clinches, but overall Boots kept on swinging. And that's what I respect the most. He got clipped. He was on some wobbly legs. He was rocked. He was hurt, but he gained his composure back. He recovered, and he was able to go in there, and he was able to continue fighting back. Even though I thought that Xander won rounds 2 to 4, y'all are going to disagree with me in the comments, and I'm ready for it. I do believe Xander won rounds 2 through 4. I still feel like Boots put up a really good fight in those rounds as well. And then obviously, you know, the 5th round comes, and then the 6th round comes, and I think Boots ends up taking over. So both these guys showed incredible heart. Both of these guys showed an amazing scrap. It's just a matter of one guy having the edge over the other, one guy just being athletically better, one guy just having the skills, having the knowledge, you know, having the more polished skills, just going in there and using his experience against a very inexperienced fighter. So I feel like the best moments in this fight were that uppercut that knocked down Zayas the second time and round 3. In my opinion, those 2 moments is what I'm going to look back on in this fight. And I'm going to be like, this is what really makes this fight so great. Now, what was on the line? Well, you're talking about a unified champion. And I mean, both of these guys had a lot riding on this fight. Like I said, a lot of legendary Puerto Rican fighters believe that Xander Zayas was going to be the next Puerto Rican great. And he still has time to show that he can be the next great Puerto Rican boxer. Then you have somebody like Jaron Boots Ennis, who really hasn't had a big fight. But we know that he is a big-time fighter. We know that this guy is going to put butts in seats. We know that he could be a poster child for boxing. And so when you look at the grand scheme of things, both of these guys had legacy riding on the line. And what makes me happy is that both of these guys are going to walk away with a lot more publicity, a lot more positive reactions than negative. Now, obviously, you're going to have guys like Victor Ortiz, Devin Haney calling Zayas a quitter. I don't believe that. Look, he got knocked down 3 times by one of the best fighters in boxing, probably. So a lot of people are saying he quit. He looked at his corner, he quit. The corner threw in the towel. That's the way it's going to be. Zayas is going to fight another day. And again, he is only 23 years old. I don't know why people are criticizing him this bad at 23. But I digress. Unified championship on the line. Both guys trying to build their legacy. One guy has a whole heritage of boxers that he has to prove that he's going to carry that torch. And the other guy has the pound-for-pound top 10 list that he's trying to make it on. And do I think Boots is going to be a pound-for-pound top 10 fighter after this fight? You're dang right I do. But both these guys had a lot of things riding on the line. Boots finally got, I don't want to say a big fight, but a hype fight. And Xander Zayas finally got some more experience in that ring that I think he can carry outside of this ring and build on for his next fight. So the stakes were big on the line. I will say that. And I think both guys delivered, honestly. So I got to give Boots and Zayas a lot of credit. And then last but not least, how does this impact the sport of boxing? Well, here's the thing. Now we have a new king at 154 pounds. I do believe that Boots is the best fighter at junior middleweight or super welterweight, whichever name you want to call it. I do believe that Zayas showed that he's got heart and that he can potentially hang with some other good fighters in boxing. However, the way I look at this is there's still some uncertainties as well. So if you guys go and you look at the post-fight interview after the fight, they asked him, well, what's next? And he said, Eddie's got the keys. You know, Eddie's got the tools. Whatever Eddie decides, that's what I'm going to do. So it's all up to Eddie Hearn. And what do I think Eddie Hearn is going to pick? I'm not sure. I know that he's been trying to negotiate with Virgil Ortiz and Sebastian Fundora. Those are some 2 very big fights for Boots to establish his legacy as well. Some very dangerous fights over there as well. You got Josh Kelly. He's the other 154-pound champion in the division. He is also a matchroom boxer as well. So that fight could be very easy to make too. Do I think that Eddie Hearn is going to make that fight? Most likely not next. However, I do feel like there is a lot of uncertainty with Boots' future. And the same thing with Zayas. They asked Zayas the same thing. What's going to happen next? Because there was speculation about Zayas moving up to 160 pounds. And he said, I'm going to take some time with the family and think it over. Now, after I give the grades, I'm going to give my opinion on what should be next for both of these guys. But even though this does impact the division, even though we have a new king at 154 pounds, even though Zayas has gained a tremendous amount of fans, there's still some uncertainty within the future of both these guys' careers. For all we know, Boots can go back to fighting C-class fighters. Zayas ends up fighting some C-class opponents at top rank. We don't know. But that's what time is going to determine. And so, as far as the grades, when you break it all down, the overall fight grade for this, I determine, is going to be an 8.63. As far as strategy, I give it an 8. I feel like both these guys came in here with a good strategy. I think the only thing that doesn't make it a 9 or a 10 is the fact that Zayas didn't move around a lot. And I feel like he didn't take advantage of his opportunities on the inside. But at the same time, Boots was just a better inside fighter. Excitement and stakes, I'm going to give it a 9. It was a very exciting fight. The only thing that doesn't make it a 10 is the fact that it wasn't back. It was back and forth, but at the same time, the only thing that doesn't make it a 10 is I'm going to look at this fight and I'm going to say it's a very exciting fight, but I don't think it's an all-time classic. Now, if this fight went the distance and we got the same thing for 12 rounds, that would make it a 10 in my opinion. And then the only reason why I don't give the stakes a 10 is because it wasn't for undisputed, and at the same time, there's other big fights to make. So this isn't the biggest fight you can make in the division. Again, a lot of us still want to see Boots versus Virgil. We thought we were potentially going to get Zayas versus Fundora. There are some big fights that we can make in this division. This is not the biggest fight, but it's still a big fight, and legacy was still on the line for both of these guys. And then last but not least, Impact, I give it an 8.5. Yes, we have a new fighter in the 154-pound division. However, there's still some uncertainty as to what's going to be next for both of these guys. So as far as Impact, I got to keep it at an 8.5. And I think that's a fair grade to put it at as well. Do I think it's going to be top 10 by the time the season's over? I think it will. I think it's going to range between the 7 and the 6 area. However, I do think it will land in the top 10. And so we get to the fun part of this episode. What is next for Boots and Zayas? Well, let's start off with Boots. As far as Boots, I think the biggest fight that a lot of us want to see is Virgil versus Boots. I still think Virgil versus Ennis is going to be a 50-50 fight. I think Virgil is better than Xander. I think Virgil is more experienced than Xander. And I think that Boots is going to have to use a lot more tools in order to beat Virgil. Same thing for Virgil. I think Virgil is going to have to use a lot more tools than he did against Madrimov to beat Boots. So I feel like both of these guys are on a collision course to meet. Virgil still has to take care of all of his problems and drama with Golden Boy Promotions. However, I do think that this fight will happen. Now, until that gets all resolved, we just can't wait for Virgil. So why not go and try to pick a fight with either Fundora or Josh Kelly? I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Josh Kelly, that's an easy fight to make. Both of those guys are in Matchroom. However, I feel like Eddie Hearn is going to try to pull the Bob Arum card and keep these guys as separate champions for as long as possible, if I had to take a guess. So I think that you need to try to make that fight with Sebastian Fundora. But Sebastian Fundora is another champion as well. Even though they're the same age, I feel like Sebastian Fundora is another champion that Boots could have his way with. But I feel like Sebastian Fundora, despite being 28 years old, is a fighter that Boots could have his way with. But at the same time, I feel like if Boots got clipped with some of the shots that Zayas was throwing, if he got clipped with those shots from Fundora, I feel like it's a whole different ballgame. And I think Boots really has to polish a lot of those skills in order to beat those guys like Fundora and Virgil Ortiz. So what do I think should be next for him? I would love to see him versus Virgil. I wouldn't mind seeing Virgil go and try to take a belt from Josh Kelly, and then we get a bigger unification bout between Ortiz and Ennis. However, I think until Virgil gets this situation resolved with Golden Boy, I think that Boots should fight Sebastian Fundora next. I think that should be the fight. I wouldn't mind him versus Josh Kelly. The 154-pound division, it is a division that could potentially be popping off. And you never know who else is going to try to go into that 154-pound division. Obviously, Teofimo Lopez at 147 has talked about fighting Boots. I don't think that's a great idea. Devin Haney could potentially go to 154. Ryan Garcia. So there's also some guys at 147 who could make that move to 154. However, I do believe that next is probably going to be Sebastian Fundora or Josh Kelly. Now, as far as Zayas, I would like to see Zayas go up to 160 pounds. And the reason why I say that is because I do believe he had problems making weight. I think he had problems making weight for this fight. He made the weight, but I also do think he was dehydrated. I do think he was drained. I think Boots beat Zayas by skill and not power. And I think if Zayas goes up to 160 pounds, I think he'll have a lot more success. I think the power will come back. I think he'll have better power at 160 pounds. I think the 160-pound division is a better division for Zayas to go and beat. Again, in the 160-pound division, you got somebody named Janabek, who is a very dangerous fighter, and you got somebody like Erzlandi Lara. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he handles those opponents. But right now, I think 154 pounds is a little too stacked for Xander. And at the same time, I don't think this is his most comfortable division either. I do think Xander should go up to 160 and test his luck over there. And at the same time, if you win a belt at 160, you become a two-division champion at probably the age of maybe 25. So I do think that's also a great accomplishment as well to build his legacy too. But I like 160 pounds for Zayas. I think Boots should really focus on becoming undisputed at 154 pounds. But if that fight with Virgil presents itself, I think you got to take it. And you already know what I'm going to say. We're just going to have to wait and see. But make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Again, make sure y'all continue to tune into the podcast, the YouTube, all the social media platforms. And tell everybody you know about the Puncher's Point. I don't care if it's a neighbor. I don't care if it's a person walking down the street. I don't care if it's a homeless guy. I don't care if it's a wealthy man. I do not care who you tell. Make sure y'all tell them to tune into the Puncher's Point for some of the best content you've ever seen. And last but not least, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.